Welcome in everybody to our introductory video. I'm Dr. Aaron Hummus, your instructor for Composition 2 here at Austin Community College. We are in an 8-week session, which is super brief. I apologize for not getting an introduction video up sooner, but I wasn't sure it was necessary, and it seems like it is, so here we are. So I want to go over a few things in this video, the syllabus itself, and a little bit about assignments and things I've received so far, as well as the upcoming first kind of major assignment. So let's start with the syllabus. And what I've realized in teaching these remote classes, both at ACC and elsewhere, is it seems like students who take these classes are not used to having a syllabus or reading a syllabus. And I'm not trying to insult you if that's you, but I guess I'm old school in this way, and we will use this thing. This is our kind of guiding document. So it is available in the content area on our Blackboard, which is kind of the brains of our course together. Most of the front end stuff is pretty straightforward, boilerplate. No incompletes, absolutely no AI, and I referred to that directly in our course expectations. So I think that's pretty obvious in a class that is a writing class. I have no doubt other classes you take may take different attitudes towards the use of AI. And more power to them. I mean, whatever they want to do. But in a writing-based class, it's totally outside the scope to use AI of any variety. I'm really not equipped to train you how to use it properly, and I would never use it myself for anything related to writing. So it is considered plagiarism. And so I give you both the university policy, college policy, so not just my own, and then also my own. This assignment table is something we will keep to quite strictly. Those initial writings you did for me are an outlier, just to kind of get the juices flowing and see how you're thinking about reading a little bit of fiction and learning a little bit about you. From now on, everything will pretty much fall into one of the 3 major assignments we're working towards. We only have 8 weeks, so we only get a couple of weeks with the first essay, a couple of weeks with the second, and then a few with the third major research essay, which is the bulk of your grade and work in here. So I think that stuff's pretty straightforward. The communication, I ask you to email me at this address and only this address. I ask you to send all assignments as doc or PDF files. You did a great job with that, those of you that submitted stuff, so thank you for that. I ask you not to send multiple attachments in a single email. Again, this first week was a special case where I asked for everything in one doc. No worries. Nobody did anything wrong. All good. I was impressed. I appreciate that. And then the syllabus itself, I will say, is a bit abbreviated. It will have the readings for the week. The page numbers are always those of the document, not the PDF. So page 29 in this book, page 105 in this book. Yeah. And the writing, again, there was 3 things for week 1 because we kind of had some different tasks to work with. From here on, it'll be 1 or 2, and if there are 2, they're quite closely related. But these early sessions are about getting control of claims in critical things we read and learning a bit about how to summarize and reflect, more importantly, on fiction. All of the fiction we read in this class together will be written by Franz Kafka, the modern-day Czech, at that point Austro-Hungarian writer from the early 20th century. All of it was written in German, and more background about Kafka will arise through the critical readings we do. And you'll have to decide how important that background is. Part of the reason I teach this class with Kafka is his writing is intentionally kind of timeless. There isn't a lot of technology or historical context that frames it in a specific era. That's intentional, I think. And so I think it's pretty easy to apply to life today in a lot of ways. So we did a little bit of reading in Kafka, and you did a little bit of writing on that. On that, a couple of comments. The natural inclination is to over-summarize when you are doing this early writing. Fight that. I've read it, I promise you. I know it well. I don't need a lot of summary. That's a useful skill, and when you do your long paper, your research paper, you will be writing for an audience that may not have read the things you're writing about. So that's a little different. When we're doing these shorter writings, it's more about extracting and original ideas. So not a huge problem, just a comment. With the claims from Hawes, mostly good. This third assignment, 3 claims. The more explicit and citational you are, the better. Yeah, so it's quite clear where it's coming from and how you see those arguments operating. So that's something we're going to be doing throughout the course with pretty much everything we read. It's a good way to take notes on critical readings based on claims and support. And then that moves us into week 2, where, again, the syllabus itself is not enough here, right? What in the world is skeleton for major assignment 1? Could be a lot of things. That's where the announcements come in. I have them scheduled to go out, as you've noticed, Monday mornings, same time approximately every Monday. I do not want to give you more information on future assignments in advance. I want you to get feedback from me, and I will give you feedback on everything that is turned in on time always. And relatively quickly. This is my only university course this summer. But you need to get things back from me in order to do the next step. There is no working ahead. Not in an 8-week class. We can't. There's not a good way to do that. So I have you reading a couple of important stories from Kafka again. And I give you your first introduction to the They Say, I Say textbook. So the way I think I would look at this if I were you is, first of all, it's a required class, I think, for everybody. So, we want to get a decent grade, and we have no choice but to take it. So we can't, regret it. If you don't like my style of teaching, so be it, but we can get through that. 2, how much writing will you be doing in the rest of your college career and or life, professional life? Some of you, it sounds like, from your course expectations, will be maybe doing more than others. But if I'm sitting in a class like this as a future computer scientist or a medical sciences person going into, say, nursing, physical therapy, what have you, I don't know how much more writing I will be doing in my life, and I certainly don't know how much more writing about literature I will be doing in my life. So I understand that. I don't take it personally. I write about literature for a living, but I don't need you to. I don't get a commission if you become an English major. So do your best and think about how much you want to use these secondary resources that will help you become a better writer. I do believe that. There's guidance in there. If you're somebody who's used to studying a math textbook or a history textbook, I have writing textbooks for you, and I think they work. So beyond that, this syllabus is kind of an outline. It's mostly a reference for where you will find readings and things like that, all of which are on the Blackboard. On that note, Brightspace is just the other name for Blackboard, the newer Blackboard. ACC still uses Blackboard. I kind of prefer it in some ways, but any reference to Brightspace is just Blackboard, and that's my bad. Different colleges at different times use different sites. That's about it. I do have the due date for the final on here, and again, this I have to take a hard line on because I will not give incompletes. And because I don't know if I'll continue to be employed by the college, to be perfectly honest. I am semester to semester, as many of your instructors probably are. And so we just got to get it done. Yeah. Yeah. Something is a lot better than nothing. So, okay. That's about all I have to say about that. There's really no other quirks of this syllabus. Let me briefly share with you then our Blackboard page, which is here. And here is the second of the lengthy announcements. Lengthy because I don't get to talk to you. I don't need to make a video every week just to say the same things I say here. Better that you can reread it when you need to. So I will try to be pretty detailed in what I'm expecting you to read for. And if there's a need, I'll certainly do more. I will do another video or two. I'm not opposed to it. But you took this class because it's a remote asynchronous class, and we don't need synchronous videos in an asynchronous class. So read through this carefully and let me know if there are questions. I have not taught this exact class in this exact format, in the both 8-week and asynchronous. So, you know, sometimes things might not line up. If that's the case, I trust that you'll contact me about it. I will note that our final paper, as I say, is a research paper, and it's going to be about Kafka in some way. Now, you can take that very broadly. It could be comparative work with film, other literature, television. It could be work about a facet of Kafka's writing or a specific story or one of his novels. If you want to do more, a little bit more reading. Many, many options. Religion, politics, science, history. Yeah. I choose him because a ton has been written about Kafka. So I want you to be taking good notes on the literature as you go and looking for patterns, thinking about in the back of your mind, what might I want to write about? What kind of thesis might I want to defend about this weirdo literature that I'm reading? So yeah, this is the general format of the announcements. I trust you'll let me know if something doesn't load up properly. And you know that all of our course readings are under content, including the syllabus, the 2 writing textbooks, this unit on argument mapping, which is the only one that's a folder with sub-documents in it. The Haws we already used, the Friedlander we're already getting into, the stories you've already read, and this other stuff is other stuff. University stuff. So that's that. Again, not trying to be insulting or treat you childlike. It just seems to me that when people take these online classes, they often expect a different sort of interface with the Blackboard or other sites that might get used, like Canva or something, or Canvas. Yeah, it's not how we're doing this. It's a writing class, so there aren't going to be like little quizzes and different videos and windows and things like that. We need to write. I give you feedback. You take that feedback. Now, one thing or skill set that I do not necessarily expect you to come to this class well-versed in, even though it's a continuation class, right? This is the second in the series. I've taught the first in the series a number of times at ACC. And I don't do any literature in there at all. I could, but I don't. Maybe your class did. Maybe it was mostly based on readings of some variety, whether fictional or not. But I also think it's entirely likely that many of you have not read fiction since high school. And for some of you, that might have been decades ago. So, or at the very least, you've not read fiction with the eye of someone who's going to need to be writing about it in a critical way. So yeah, I don't think that's reasonable, but I also don't expect a lot there. This is not an intro to lit class. You can take that class and you can gain more tools for reading literature well. The main use of the fiction here is to hopefully get you interested. Something sparks an interest. And I think people's interpretations of the bucket rider along class analysis made a lot of sense. There's definitely some cruelty in there and some strangeness and some sadness. So Those affective resonances, I think, came across well. But very few of you, a couple, but few of you cited directly from the text. And when you're trying to defend interpretations of literary texts, we need to know what the words are. Now, this is translated work, and that carries with it its own quirks, but Kafka's German is pretty straightforward. I mean, I can read it, and I'm not amazing at German. So I'm telling you, these translations are pretty good. We should trust them and take them at face value. So I want to read through with you a very, very short story of Kafka's that we are not going to do in the class. It actually ends up getting included in one of his novels called The Trial. But it was a freestanding piece. They call it a parable in the complete stories. And I remind you, Kafka was an attorney, as was his father. And the concept of being Kafkaesque has a lot to do with law and petty bureaucracy. So, this is a guy writing about his profession as he desperately wants out of it. He was, writing fiction at night and hated his job. Don't most of us, right? Or at the very least, we wonder if there's something better. So, when we think parable, I'm not sure that's what Kafka would have called it necessarily, but that has almost kind of a religious overtone to it. Let's read this very short Kafka story, and I want to give you some pointers on how to read it. First of all, openings and closings are very important. And so with many of these stories that weren't published, they might not have had titles. And so sometimes either Max Brod, Kafka's literary executor, or other editors have chosen the title. Here they just pick the first 3 words of the story. So when it was published, if things are published, and it says so in the book, right? Published stories, not published stories. If it's published, he titled it. You can rest assured. If not, all bets are off. So this story opens with a preposition, before. Before the law stands a doorkeeper. And I don't want to nitpick every detail of this story, but before is a pretty flexible preposition in English, and it is in German as well. English is a Germanic language, so we share a lot of those things. Before the law stands a doorkeeper, before could mean what? In front of? Antecedent in time? Or preceding, I should say. But if he's standing, we're assuming he's standing in front of it, whatever that means. What does it mean to stand in front of the law? So Kafka's writing is off-putting in some ways. It's meant to kind of get you off your spot and forced to interpret right from the jump. Now, I also caution you against reading Kafka metaphorically. We should take what he says at face value unless there's a real strong reason to think he's using symbolism or metaphor. Before the law stands a doorkeeper. To this doorkeeper there comes a man. Very strange verb tenses. To this doorkeeper there comes, this kind of present tense. From the country, and prays for admittance to the law. So apparently the law is something one gets into. But the doorkeeper says that he cannot grant admittance at the moment. Okay, so they speak. The man thinks it over and asks if he will be allowed in later. And finally, we get some quotation marks. It is possible, says the doorkeeper, but not at the moment. So, ambiguity, uncertainty, the bureaucracy and gatekeepers being unwilling to volunteer actual information. Since the gate stands open, as usual, again, whatever that means, the law's gate is open as usual, and the doorkeeper steps to one side, the man stoops to peer through the gateway into the interior. Observing that, the doorkeeper laughs and says, if you are so drawn to it, just try to go in despite my veto. But take note, I am powerful, and I am only the least of the doorkeepers. From hall to hall, there is one doorkeeper after another. even more powerful than the last. Long sentence, right? Third doorkeeper is already so terrible that even I cannot bear to look at him. So, a string of hallways making up the law, with more and more terrible doorkeepers, but we don't actually know what they do. We just know the third guy is hard to look at. These are difficulties the man from the country has not expected. The law, I think, should surely be accessible at all times and to everyone. Nobody says it wasn't, right? But as he now takes a closer look at the doorkeeper in his fur coat with his big sharp nose and long thin black Tartar beard, he decides that it is better to wait until he gets permission to enter. Nobody told him to do that. He decided it. So he has some agency here. He decides. The doorkeeper gives him a stool and lets him sit down at the side of the door. There he sits for days and years. So the dilation of time here. And we'll see that elsewhere as well. He makes many attempts to be admitted and wearies the doorkeeper by his importunity. Again, attempts. How do we read that? The doorkeeper frequently has little interviews with him, asking him questions about his home and many other things, but the questions are put indifferently as great lords put them and always finish with the statement that he cannot be let in yet. So indifferently. Small talk. The man, who has furnished himself with many things for his journey, sacrifices all he has, however valuable, to bribe the doorkeeper. The doorkeeper accepts everything, but always with the remark, I am only taking it to keep you from thinking you have omitted anything. So again, this is not metaphorical. This is a statement about access to the law for someone from the country. Maybe we can relate to that, depending on where we are from, what the country means. And this arbiter of the law just making the man feel like he's done everything he could. During these many years, the man fixes his attention almost continuously on the doorkeeper. He forgets the other doorkeepers, and this first one seems to him the sole obstacle preventing access to the law. So narrowing his field of vision not to the law anymore, but to the doorkeeper. He curses his bad luck in his early years boldly and loudly. Later, as he grows old, he only grumbles to himself. He becomes childish. And since it is year-long contemplation of the doorkeeper, he has come to know even the fleas in his fur collar. He begs the fleas as well to help him and change the doorkeeper's mind. Animals often do interesting things in Kafka. They relate to the story in strange and mixed ways. At length, his eyesight begins to fail, so we get the signs of age, and he does not know whether the world is really darker or whether his eyes are only deceiving him. Devastating, right? And it's meant to be. Yet in his darkness, he is now aware of a radiance that streams inextinguishably from the gateway of the law. Now he has not very long to live. Before he dies, all his experiences in these long years gather themselves in his head to one point, a question he has not yet asked the doorkeeper. So, a lot of weight being given to these utterances, what's left to be said after a lifetime with somebody. He waves him nearer. Since he can no longer raise his stiffening body, the doorkeeper has to bend low toward him. Apparently the doorkeeper is not aged in the same way. For the difference in height between them has altered much to the man's disadvantage. What do you want to know now? Asked the doorkeeper. You are insatiable. Everyone strives to reach the law, says the man. So how does it happen that all these many years no one but myself has ever begged for admittance? Maybe a question that the reader is asking as well. If we're trying to put ourselves in this strange world and take it seriously, that is a question that might occur to us. The doorkeeper recognizes that the man has reached his end. How would one recognize that? Unless maybe they were accustomed to it. And to let his failing senses catch the words, roars in his ear. No one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. I am now going to shut it. It's easy to read Kafka and a story like this as some kind of mirror of life, some kind of very dark, tragic impossibility. And I think those interpretations are reasonable and can be defended. But it's also worth noting that Kafka saw a lot of his own stories as humorous. And as a lawyer, this may feel like his day-to-day practice with the law. Or with people who seek to access it as if it's some great thing, when maybe it ain't all that. So we open with before the law and we end with shutting it. A very physical rendition of what the law is. It's a lot more questions than answers here. But he packs in a lifetime into this brief story, or at least as much of a lifetime as the man's arrival until his death. So I hope this gives you at least a sense of the kinds of patterns we see in Kafka and some things to read for. We read for plot, but we also read for repetition and patterns, the way that dialogue is used, the way that the characters relate to one another, choices of words. That bit about the radiance streaming inextinguishably is very poetic and high-minded in the midst of this otherwise pretty straightforward story. And I hope this gives you some things to think about as you read other works of Kafka's of varying lengths. In any case, friends, that is my introduction to you all. I welcome you all to the world of Kafka. And I look forward to seeing how you deal with Friedlander and some of these other critical readings that maybe treat Kafka quite differently than you see him, because they have a different vested interest. So with that, our new week 2 announcement is up. Assignments are due Monday by 9 a.m. as always. You know where and how to reach me. And I look forward to reading what you write and writing back to you.